today for let me start my recording. Great. Thank you for joining us today for the first meeting of our community process for Mary Soo Hoo Park. In creating the event, we wanted to make sure we built a multilingual space. So we are very lucky and grateful to have two amazing interpreters with us, Melissa Lowe and Hui Gao. They'll be providing language access services this evening in Cantonese and Mandarin. You should see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. Everyone here will need to click the globe and select your preferred language. Please select Chinese for Cantonese, German for Mandarin, and English for English. Unfortunately, Zoom does not provide more specific options, so apologies for the inaccuracies in the German language option. And just if you do want English, you have to select English or you won't hear certain things. So just make sure to go ahead and do that. Today's presentation and conversation is being recorded on Zoom and will be made available afterwards. My name is Keelan Caldwell. I'm the Director of Programs and Community Engagement for the Greenway Conservancy. I've displayed a couple of Zoom tips if you need them, how to mute and unmute, how to raise your hand, and then we'd love to get a quick sense of who's with us today. So we're going to put up a poll on the screen. And if you could just choose your sort of main description, just one option. And then while people are responding to that, I just wanted to acknowledge the other members of the Conservancy team here tonight. So Rachel Lake, our Assistant Director of External Affairs, Rex Sen, Capital Projects Manager, Bob Stigberg, our Director of Capital and Maintenance, Karina Halcomb, our Digital Marketing Co-op, and I think I've got everyone. Yep. So we all work for the Rose Kennedy Greenway Conservancy. It's a nonprofit that is responsible for the management and care of the Greenway. The Greenway is owned by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and they lease it to us for total operating control. Looks like we could share the results of that poll. Oops.
I didn't know what to check.
You're all the things. You're every category. Looks like we have a lot of residents and a lot of people that work in or near Chinatown, which is great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the specific area that we're discussing tonight and its history. You can drop any comments or questions into the chat as we go along or ask at the end. So this is a map of the whole Greenway. And then here are the Greenway spaces in Chinatown. So Auntie Kay and Uncle Frank Chin Park is sort of the whole area here, including the plaza, the Serpentine Path, and then Mary Soo Hoo Park is this area to the south of the Chinatown Gate. I want to go through the history going back. In 2005, this space was dedicated to Mary Soo Hoo by Mayor Menino. In 2010, the BPDA led a community input process for park redesign. So this is sort of from that process. At the time, the Conservancy was not in control of this area. It wasn't part of the lease, but we did have input on the process. We did comment on, the play equipment that went out in the proposed granite hills. Here's what sort of the mock-up of this space was as a play space for children on the hills. And that's what went in when the park sort of redesigned and was opened in 2011. The Conservancy took over care in 2015 when it got added to our lease. And in 2019, and sort of hearing community feedback, knowing that the mounds were used for more negative uses than positive, and with the input of the Soo Hoo family, we decided to remove those hills. And we talked in 2019 about adding pilots to this area, play equipment, fitness equipment that could be temporary and come out if people, didn't like it that way. And then the pandemic hit. So 2020, we weren't able to do much with the reduced budget, but we did work to add some security elements to the park. And then in 2021, we removed the granite hills. We also hosted the residence lab program in this space, which was a great use, temporary use. And we decided to, instead of doing a pilot program, to do the community process and make the enhancements more long-term. So, that's kind of where we are now. This year, we are putting our Year of the Tiger art installation in this space. So there will be something in the space this year. And then we're doing this enhancements planning process throughout the year. And then just wanted to mention that there's sort of two sides to Mary Soo Hoo Park. We're mostly thinking about this side highlighted here where the mounds were, that is now pretty empty. The other side has a bunch of tables and benches. It's very well utilized. Some people love that utilization. Some people, have thoughts on the gambling that might happen there. So we can certainly talk about that side, but just wanted to mention we're focusing the enhancements on the highlighted side. Here's a sense of our timeline. So we're in April now, having our first community meeting. We also released a survey to get input multiple ways. We'd encourage everyone here to also take the survey. You can use this QR code. From sort of May to July, we'll be looking at those survey results and creating some different options for site plans based on the features that people are most interested in seeing. In the summer, we'll hold a second community meeting, hopefully in person and virtual, to get feedback on those couple of designs. Moving into fall, we'll be working on a final site plan, construction plan, and we'll host a third community meeting to review that plan and sort of the implementation timeline. And then depending on the elements and a couple other projects we have going on, maybe this fall, maybe next spring, we'll really be moving into construction and installation. So these are the focus areas. There's a lot of information, but I'll talk through each one a little bit. And I just wanted to mention that these areas came out of sort of what we've heard in the past 3 to 5 years. So specifically the Chinatown Master Plan 2020, the Asian CDC's Anchor Initiative, resident walks and feedback organized by Councillor Flynn's office, and ongoing conversations with stakeholders. So I'm gonna zip through those areas. So more or different seating. The space right now in this area has no seating. The mounds were somewhat utilized for that. We have different options, benches, tables and chairs like we already have, or more movable, rearrangeable seating. More play space is something we've heard a lot. The play cubes are a great option, but they're a little bit exposed in the plaza. They might not be the best fit for younger kids or older kids. So a few options for this space: we could do musical play, we could do a ping pong table, we could add some smaller climbing structure, or water misters is another option. Fitness equipment, a big trend these days is to do things that are quite simple and can be used for many exercises. And talking to the Wang YMCA, that's what they do for a lot of their classes, especially for elders. There's also quite a lot of targeted park equipment that could be an option, or even a sort of bigger multi-piece that can do a lot on one structure. Public art is something we've done in this space for years, but we could look more specifically in this area of Mary Soo Hoo Park at murals on the ground, at sculpture installations in this area, or more performances like dance or music. Greenery is another major feedback point we heard. This space is a little hard to add to because it's actually quite shady already, but we could look at additional planters. We could emphasize that we really want to keep the trees that are here, especially the smaller trees in the middle. We could look at adding more plantings to the existing garden beds. We do a lot of community programs on the plaza, but we could expand that more into this area. We have a play session program that we could use this space for. We could do more fitness classes if the space remains sort of open or had fitness equipment in it. We could look at more cultural events and programs, which we often do in partnership with community organizations, or more art-based activities that relate to the art we have on an annual basis. And there's also amenities. A drinking fountain is something we only have one drinking fountain currently on the Greenway. We had a very long process that the city ran looking at the potential of putting a public restroom in Chin Park that ultimately is unworkable given the site conditions, but knowing that public urination is a problem in this area, we could look at a temporary solution like a porta potty. We could further improve our Wi-Fi connectivity in this area. We could add more trash and recycling or more cigarette disposals. So that's a lot of ideas and for a very small space. So that's what we'll be discussing tonight. Before I sort of open it up to discussion, I would like to introduce Zoe Davis, who's the Climate Resiliency Project Manager with the City of Boston's Office of Environment, Energy, and Open Space. Zoe is joining us because we are actually in the process of installing a drinking fountain and a water mister in another area of Chin Park, sort of closer to the Serpentine Path. That was an immediate response to heat concerns in this neighborhood. So I just wanted to note that it's on this list, but we also are already moving that forward. So Zoe, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thanks, Keelan. I'll just provide a bit of context here, or additional context. So hello, everyone. As Keelan had mentioned, I'm Zoe Davis with the City of Boston's Environment Department. Specifically, I'm on the Climate Ready Boston team. And so just to provide some background on this, my team coordinates climate resilience planning throughout the city to prepare for the impacts of climate change, including flooding and heat, extreme heat as well. And so I've been serving as the project manager for the city's heat resilience plan that will actually be released this spring. So stay tuned. Looking forward to continuing to share that work with you all. So we know that extreme heat poses a significant risk in Boston, and these risks will continue in the future with climate change. And so the purpose of this plan is to determine what we need to do in order to keep people safe and increase access to cooling resources today, as well as set ourselves up well to do the same in the future. So as part of the heat resilience plan, the city is advancing ways to increase access to cooling resources this summer. Potable water is necessary to have in parks and open spaces, really public spaces generally, for people to stay cool in the summer. And so we're really excited to be partnering with the Greenway Conservancy on these enhancements in Chin Park to increase access to cooling resources. So as Keelan had mentioned, you may have noticed some construction going on. And so that's, we're working to bring potable water into the community space so that folks who are enjoying that space can also stay cool. So I'll pass it back to you, Keelan. Thank you.
Thanks, Zoe. So that's the end of my prepared remarks. So at this point, I'd really like to open it up to anyone who has a question. And just a reminder that we are doing interpretation, so to speak slowly, and we might need a little time if there's any questions that need translation. Well, who would like to start?
Hi, everyone. Cynthia Soo Hoo. I'm actually Mary's second daughter. Thank you to the whole Greenway team for coming tonight to present. And Zoe, sounds very exciting to look at these water features and, opportunities in the space. One piece that really captured my attention is like item number 2 and 3 around like how it can be utilized for like active movement, right? So whether it's looking at fitness equipment or play structures for young children, that's kind of piquing my interest right now. So I don't know if we're going to get into groups and talk about it, or if it's just like kind of open discussion right now.
Just open discussion. We're not a huge group, so I think that works pretty well.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to go back to any slides, Cynthia, if you'd like to look at anything specific.
Yeah, the fitness equipment, I've been seeing around lots of different places, in the country that have these innovative spaces, like the one in the blue, which is like multi-use. You can utilize it for lots of different things. I'm not sure if the space is really conducive to that, or if it's more like finding other things that are more versatile, like the bars that are on the bottom. But I know at the school, we still have groups that come out to do Tai Chi and other kind of morning exercises. So I know that, community members could really benefit from having some equipment to continue their exercises. And I think it's pretty versatile with different age groups as well.
Great. Does anyone want to respond to that or talk more about play or fitness or any of this? And I can also prompt, we had heard through some of those sources that spaces for younger children, spaces for teenagers, and spaces for elders are all sort of a need in Chinatown. I'm not sure we can accomplish all 3 of those in one space, but would love to just hear any sort of yay or nay on certain populations that might need a nice space.
Hi, Keelan. This is Susan.
Hi, Susan.
I sort of agree with Cynthia. I think it would be good to have some sort of play sets for children. I mean, I grew up around Chinatown. I remember there used to be a slide on one side of Mary Soo Hoo Park, but at some point it got removed. So there's not really much there in terms of recreation for kids now. Maybe it could be like a swing set, a slide, or something that could be enjoyed by like a range of number of people.
Great. One question within that, maybe sort of going back to this greenery, there's several trees in the middle of this area that feel important to us, though also limit our ability to put bigger equipment in. Would love to know if anyone has any specific feelings about those trees. And if feel free to put any feedback in the chat as well.
Keelan, I'm wondering if there are any, I don't know if they're called restrictions or like guidelines, I guess, to have equipment in an open space. I know that there's like that wall that's kind of like seeded in the planter bed. But would there have to be fencing or anything if there was play structures for children?
I don't think fencing is required, though Bob or Rex, feel free to chime in. There is a lot of specific requirements around safety surfacing, which we learned more about with the play cubes. So depending on how tall equipment is, you need a certain area of a fall zone. So that's part of the reason we looked at sort of things that were already on the ground, the musical play equipment, or, you know, like even the animal riders. But Rex, Bob, anything to add?
Yeah, all of the equipment usually has a predetermined clearance area that you have to have when you install the equipment. And as long as you have that clearance space, then there shouldn't be an issue. But that also goes for height. So for that bigger blue piece of equipment, there's a sort of height restriction if someone was standing up there. And, you know, we're hoping to put in catenary lights in Mary Soo Hoo. And there's the possibility that if someone was standing on a taller piece of equipment, they could bonk their head into a light fixture. So that's something to keep in mind.
I don't have anything else to offer, really. I don't think there are any restrictions in terms of fencing off the area. But yeah, definitely if you have something that someone can climb onto over a certain height, we will need to install that resilient surfacing underneath it. So.
I also want to add that if there is specialized equipment in Mary Soo Hoo Park, we'd want to pair it with signage to provide direction and safety instructions so that people know how to use the equipment safely.
Cynthia, I'd also be curious, or anyone, if gating off would be helpful or feel like it's a safer space for young children.
So if we're going to be getting off, would that be specifically? So would that specifically make the park only for for kids?
I think it would end up feeling a little bit that way.
Hi everybody. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Chu. I'm the Chinatown liaison for the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. I also wanted to ask if we could go a little bit more in detail about the art. I think that was number 4 on the list. Yeah.
Sure. Any specific question or just give an overview?
Just, yeah, like what do we have any like plans for the murals as of right now?
So there's sort of a complicated art environment in Mary Soo Hoo Park. There's an existing mural on the side that we're talking about at the bottom of the vent structure. There's also a mural. I can actually go back. I'll try. This mural is still under the wrapping around the vent structure. And then the wrap around the vent structure is itself sort of an art piece from the MFA collection. So there's a lot going on in the space. Our public art team is sort of investigating all of those a little more to learn the history. The vent stack itself is not in our lease, so it's a little complicated there, but we know that there's some interest in reviving this mural. There's a repointing project happening on the vent. So I think a few things have yet to be sort of resolved or fully explored there. But we could, the reason I sort of chose these images, I guess, Ponapa has done several murals in Chinatown. She also came up with a concept for a ground mural in Mary Soo Hoo Park, working with, I think Gina's on this call, or she was for a moment, working with the ACDC youth. that was part of that pilot idea, but that we didn't pursue because we had a different art piece coming in. So I think there's a ground mural potential, and that was playing with the hopscotch idea. I think something like a sculpture would be, all of our art that we typically curate is temporary. So it would be, you know, up for a short period of time, but draw some interest to the space. Performances is something we're working on more to curate and add. A lot of our community programs or programs generally we're hosting. So we're relying on a partner to bring an idea to us, which is great. It's how we have 400 events in the park, but certain things where artists really need to be paid, like performances, we don't see as much of. So that's an area we will likely invest more time and resources in. And we've tried it a little bit in this space.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the clarification on the art piece. I also had another quick question. Could you go back one slide?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, what? Another one? It's the slide with like the lounge chairs.
Yep, the benches.
Oh yeah. So what is the idea behind this?
Sure. So this is all, and again, Bob and Rex, let me know if I'm wrong, existing furniture in the park. So, and this bench might be a little off, but we do have a lot of sort of traditional backed benches. There are some in Chinatown that are an older design, but we could certainly look at adding something that matches the other benches that we're updating on the Greenway. These table and chair carousels already exist in Chin Park. We could just be adding more of those. The movable furniture is what we chose for the North End when that park went under some renovations based on what their community was looking for, where there would be, this area is used a lot for sort of like sunbathing, lounging, and different family groups come and go. So people kind of rearrange the furniture. That all gets locked up at night as well. But anything to add, Bob or Rex?
No, I don't have anything else. I think the message here is that we're open to new ideas for furnishings in Chin and Mary Soo Hoo Parks. So we're kind of exploring and hoping for some feedback.
I would note also as well, I know folks may say, oh, we're not seeing as much of our tables and chairs out right now. So the Conservancy is also refinishing some of our tables and chairs that normally are out in Chin Park Plaza and in Mary Soo Hoo, and it's also the beginning of our season. So those tables and chairs will be coming back this season. So in addition to what you would normally see, and will be coming out soon, we're looking for kind of any other feedback or thoughts based on the norm. But, we do understand that it is the beginning of the season. We do have some of our equipment still pulled back right now because we're actually having them cleaned and redone.
I think they return tomorrow. Angela, see your hand raised.
Hi, this is Angela. I just wanted to answer Keelan's previous question about fencing. So as parent of little kids, they're really fast. Not saying that I would like to see that area kind of designated only for like little kid play, but if it were to be, I would feel most comfortable if there was a gate, just because it's so close to surface road. And kids like to bolt sometimes. So that would be something to consider. But I also feel in a way that kind of fencing off kind of maybe what Chu just said in a way kind of limits the area to like one type of use, but that might also not be a bad thing. And I wanted to just comment about the chairs. I really like the table and chair combinations that are out there already. I see a lot of people utilizing that. They go into the local businesses, they buy food, they sit out there and they eat and just enjoy socializing. And I think those are really great. And if it were up to me, I would kind of go away from any kind of lounge or long benches where people can kind of lay down and sleep on. So I think the table and seat combinations are great. Thank you.
Do people feel like, I do think fitness and play is also performing well in our survey. And do people feel like if we did one of those, we should also be looking at adding seating or a place to sit down?
Sorry, I was like, but I guess to your,
you're breaking up a little bit for me.
I'll chat it.
Okay, sorry. Okay, we have some one comment. Yes, please add seating.
This is Gilbert. I would like to prefer to see some of the tables and chair not being so movable, because I see a lot of people just moving all over the place. The park. I mean, I feel for the guy to clean up. They just have to moving back and forth, and it's just too much work, too heavy, and dragging all across the park.
And I think that might. Oh, Gina.
Is my internet? Can you hear me?
You're just like laggy.
No.
She did send a chat.
Yes, would the seating on the perimeter wall be available? Yeah, I don't think we changed that. Though in some areas it could get close to the equipment.
To your comment about moving the current tables with seating, I think one of the reasons we selected those, we thought they would be heavy enough so that wouldn't happen. But I guess you could look at it as a form of exercise that people do. And we also toyed with the idea of anchoring them into the ground so they could not be moved. But we've been reluctant to do that only because there are times, and they would be able to be moved for events. But we weren't sure how well that would go over, because I think sometimes they get moved to under the trees to shadier areas. So it's kind of been a struggle for us.
I think this might relate to Zoe's work, that this year we tried to find a sort of an immediate solution to some of the heat, but we've talked a little bit about the lack of shade on that plaza, and perhaps putting some seating into Mary Soo Hoo, which is one of the shadier areas, could be helpful. But I think long term, that is a very hot open space where the sun moves around, and that's why the tables move. So that could be an important note for any shade work we might work on in the future.
And just so that it gets read into the translation, Gina also noted that she would strongly advocate for flexible and movable furniture in the park.
Now we've had a few new people join, so I'm just going to go back a slide to our focus areas. Anyone else? Could shades be added to the benches with back? Possibly. I think that for shade structures, and Bob and Rex, feel free to join in too, how they're anchored is a big thing to think about for wind, especially like when wind picks up. And also because the way the sun moves at certain times of the day, it will provide full shade, and at other times it will provide no shade in certain areas. And then I think anytime we're adding sort of a structure that protects people from the elements, you are thinking about how people might use that overnight or to rest more long term, and that could invite back some of the negative activity that we've seen in the past. So those are my 3 thoughts on shades structures. Bob and Rex, anything else?
Feel free to speak up, Rex, but yeah, it's something that we've talked about not only in Chin Park, but but elsewhere in the park. Here, the attempt right now is to, with new lighting and new and more catenary lights across the plaza, as well as the Lantern Festival each year. It's not to say it can't be done, but it's a little more complicated, and we have kind of learned the hard way with different things we've done that wind is a real force on the Greenway, and this is one of the areas where it is so. So I think perhaps we could solve that problem with more umbrellas. That would be another way to try and provide more shade.
I think Keelan is better, hopefully.
Still a little glitchy. Sorry, Gina.
I need to upgrade the internet.
Oh, always happens to someone.
We'll call that a vote for increased Wi-Fi on the park.
Gina, maybe turn off the video. Sometimes it's the.
You all hear me?
Try.
It's fine.
Wait, maybe a little better. I can't tell. Well, feel free to keep typing and stuff, Gina. We will read it. Because I will say Gina has been very helpful in putting this process together and thinking through these focus areas and engaging with the youth in the A-Voice program. So. Cynthia agrees with flexible and movable furniture. I'd love to just maybe ask for a little more feedback on the greenery portion. And again, if people feel like we should prioritize retaining those trees or planters or more plantings in the beds would help meet some of the greenery feedback we've heard.
So this is Helen. I love the greenery, but if we had greenery there, would it interfere with or take the place of any of the play equipment or the seating equipment?
I think not necessarily if we focused on the beds that are already there. There's some horticultural challenges in those beds, but if that was an area of importance, we could continue to work on that. Planters, I think we would just need to think about how they fit into the plan. And then I think the big one is these trees in the middle. If we're keeping them, they do limit some of our options. They're not particularly healthy. They don't, they're smaller. They do have a shade impact, but the trees in the beds are over them, so much bigger. So that's a problem we'll have to figure out, because we hate to take trees away, but they might be in the way of doing something more meaningful here.
I never want to take trees away.
Yeah. They looked really nice in this picture too. I should have picked a different picture. Anyone else have thoughts on the trees?
And the landscaping is always nice to have.
Yep.
It's calm, it's peaceful.
And there's one question in the chat. Are we talking about planters just in this side area or the entire Chinatown Park? Either. I mean, I think one of the things we're hoping to get out of the survey, out of feedback is what are the general priorities, and then what can we accomplish in this area and what can we double down on in other areas of the park? I think our planters, for example, we moved planters closer to the play cubes when we finished that project last year. And I think that made a huge difference in how the center of the park works, looks. So that could be an option in this space, but more generally, just get more planters, which is not uncomplicated, but less complicated than, adding a whole plant bed.
I'll weigh in about just the trees. To be honest with you, I need to go and take a closer look at those, but there's something about the height of the trees which marks the territory of the Greenway. And when when I'm walking by there every day, it's just the speed of the traffic is such that it's as if they don't realize that there's a neighborhood, that it's part of the Greenway. And so if there's another way of getting something vertical in there, it should be considered. But right now, it seems like the trees are the best option for getting that height to mark that territory.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, and we definitely wouldn't touch the outer trees, which are what's providing the shade in this area, along with the vet at certain times of day. But I actually sort of like the height of the littler trees too, to give it sort of like a human scale. Thank you.
Yeah, one thought on the trees. You're specifically talking about the two trees in the middle of that section. Yeah. If it were, I think we always talk about how Chinatown has one of the lower tree covering ratios for neighborhoods in the city. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about adding more trees on other areas of the Greenway, some of the challenges that the highway, the tunnel is killing the trees, or there's for some reason it won't live. It's not really viable. And so whatever ways we have existing healthy trees, I think that's great to preserve. But if the trees aren't doing that great or are not that healthy, and it's also really minimizing maximum light, I think the challenge of those two trees is that it creates a funnel in the pathway to enter deeper into the park. And then deeper into that side of the park is where we see a lot of the unwanted use, a lot of the public urination or defecation, a lot of the needle use in the back, because it feels almost sheltered behind the two trees. So if removing it and being able to expand greenery in other ways, I think I wouldn't want to see removal without substantial improvement on greenery. But it is definitely I see a lot of drawbacks in it in terms of usage of the space. Yeah.
Yep. And here's a different angle. So it looks like it's 5 trees. You can see here how they're not doing that well. And I think that's in part due to sort of the underground planting conditions, which is sort of typical along the Greenway, that we don't really often have that much space underneath for trees to grow big. So even putting a tree up in a planting bed gives sort of significant benefit. So that's why, our horticulture staff definitely feels like these trees are declining, not super helpful. But I like the point that if we'll remove those to sort of try to offset it.
I know you said that the vent stack, that vent wall isn't a part of the lease. Is there a way that there could be a section of that vent wall that's green? I know we're exploring murals on both of the longer facades, but on the shorter ends, is there a way that you can have a green wall even to offset some of the bad air coming out through that vent?
Yeah, we did. we're learning more about the vents. And Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, but the primary purpose of this is like actually, could you just say, Rachel, what the primary?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, as Keelan said, our public art team and our operations team is really trying to learn more about the vent stacks with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. And it is my understanding, and I believe it is our understanding, that that vent specifically in Mary Soo Hoo Park is an emergency air shaft vent and actually doesn't provide any filter for the air coming out of the tunnel. So, this was something Councillor Flynn, I know, had thought about is, could that vent stack have more filtration and that's, I don't believe, an option, because that is not one of the primary uses for that vent stack.
We also were made aware that all this vent stack and two that are sort of more in the leather district all need repointing work fairly badly. And this is now in MassDOT's capital budget. Work could start as early as this fall. We are trying to understand all the implications of that and actually sort of advocating that the other vent stacks be done first because they're in less pedestrian heavy areas, and we'd like them to learn the lessons of vent stack work over there. And we have a lot of construction projects happening. But when that happens, I do think there'll be some opportunities. They've already talked about adding more of a structure to hang public art from. So we could certainly look at the green wall because that would be the opportunity when everyone's already up there working on it. I do think they're quite complicated to sort of keep very healthy, but I've also seen it done well in other cities and countries. So we can definitely get that on the list. It would be pretty cool, right next to the gate.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of, like in other cities, they'll have green walls on like the pillars of like highway columns to offset some of that. And it is really close to the highway ramp and all along where the highway was. It'd be great if whatever state infrastructure there would be, that especially currently unused state infrastructure that takes up a pretty large footprint in place space, that it contributes something back to the community. So yeah, even if MassDOT could help with that funding, that'd be great.
And we have a few attendees we haven't heard from, no pressure, but if you'd like to add any more thoughts about any of this, I'll get back to my focus area slide.
And again, just to read in to make sure it gets translated for other recordings, Arturo noted that there's a mural covered by the current MFA ad. It would be nice to uncover that mural again. Thank you, Arturo. We did talk about the public art piece of this a little bit earlier tonight, and I'll just repeat that our public art team as well as our operations team is really working to do some research here on the kind of history of that vent stack and what those opportunities could look like. And then Susan Shu wrote in that if adding fencing, maybe greenery could be tied into that as well.
Thanks, Rachel. Oh no, going to the survey.
And I'll just note as well, thank you so much to everyone who has already taken our survey. I just threw the link in the chat again. We also have printable translated versions as well available on our website, and we'll be helping to kind of get those more distributed in the community as well.
So I'll say that what I heard tonight so far is that people are interested in play space and fitness, in seeing some seating elements, and in learning more about the greenery options or offsetting any tree removal with more greenery in this space. Anything else that people want to raise up or reinforce? Okay, well, we don't all have to stay till 7 p.m. if we feel like that's most of what we wanted to talk about. But I'm going to talk a little bit and give everyone one more chance to weigh in. And as we've said, the survey goes a little more in depth on all of this. So any help spreading that to your friends, your family, your colleagues would be really appreciated. If you have more thoughts that you didn't want to share in this form or you think of later, feel free to email us at info@rosekennedy-greenway.org. That goes to Rachel directly, who can get it to the right person, get it to me. We'll also keep one of our website pages sort of updated on the status of the project. So you can visit that page at rosekennedy-greenway.org/MSH project. Rachel can drop that link in too. You can also follow all of our social media accounts if you don't already, get our e-news, make sure you get the information about the second community meeting. I expected that following the survey, we will put together a couple potential layouts for the space. There'll be something more concrete to give some feedback on. So just one final check if anyone has any feedback on this. We also at the beginning of the meeting or earlier covered that we are currently installing a water fountain and a water mister, not in Mary Soo Hoo Park, but near the end of the Serpentine path. If anyone has any feedback on that, it will look semi-permanent, but it is intended to be, we'll take feedback on it. We're open to moving the location. We got it to where we could get it in sort of our short timeline this year, but we have already heard, we already are thinking that we might want to get those things closer to the play cubes as we do some of our other construction work this spring. So any other feedback on water fountain, water mister, any of these focus areas?
And I'll just note by water fountain, we're talking about a drinking fountain.
Yeah.
So
Thanks,
the place where you can get a drink and fill up your water bottle as well. So I think it also has a pet, like a dog or a pet level drinking bowl.
Yeah. Okay, hearing no more comments. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for all of you that are here that we know well for supporting us tonight. And hopefully our summer meeting will be out in the park and we can all enjoy seeing the space together. And I'll say bye and wait for the translation to finish and end the recording. Good night, all.
Thank you, Keelan.
Mm-hmm.